We were not the first, and definitely not the only ones. There were others, strange, mysterious humans, living beside us. Some even left their DNA inside us. We like to believe that human history began with us, Homo sapiens, as if we were the first and only humans to walk the earth. But that is nothing more than a comforting illusion, because long before we built civilizations or planted flags on the map, our ancestors lived in a world full of other humans, a world that was crowded with cousins we barely remember, and to truly understand our story, we must return to the birthplace of our species, Africa, around 300,000 years ago. In the plains, river valleys, and forests of this vast continent, early Homo sapiens emerged, learning to hunt, cooperate, share stories by firelight, and slowly adapt to every environment they encountered. But astonishingly, we were not the only ones there. Living deep in the shadowy caves of South Africa was another species known as Homo Naledi, a small-bodied hominin standing just about 4 feet 9 inches tall, with curved, ape-like fingers, strange shoulders suited for climbing, and brains barely as big as an orange. Yet despite their size, they walked upright like us, and some of them may have performed the unthinkable for such a small-brained species, possibly placing their dead deep inside cave chambers, suggesting that they might have had a sense of ritual or symbolic awareness, something we once thought only Homo sapiens could do. Imagine early humans moving through the forest, camped near the entrance of a cave, hearing strange noises from within, glimpsing tiny human-like shapes disappearing into the darkness. Did they see Homo Naledi as monsters, spirits, or simply other people who looked bizarre? We do not know, but the evidence suggests that we coexisted with them for tens of thousands of years, and they might have watched us from afar as we evolved new tools, new hunting strategies, and perhaps even language itself. While Homo Naledi vanished without a sound, leaving behind a few skulls and bones in the Rising Star Cave system, their mystery remains, and their existence raises a deep question. Does intelligence require a large brain, or is there another kind of awareness we do not yet understand? But even they are not the only forgotten cousins we had in Africa, because geneticists have discovered another group of humans we never even saw, so-called ghost hominins, whose fossils remain undiscovered, yet whose DNA still lives inside the genes of modern West African people today. By analyzing genetic patterns in living Africans, scientists found evidence of an archaic human species that split from our lineage perhaps over 700,000 years ago, and eventually interbred with early Homo sapiens, leaving traces that still shape immune systems and biological functions in some populations. We do not know what these ghost humans look like, what tools they used, or how they lived, but their existence proves that even in our homeland, we were never alone. Hundreds of thousands of years before we left Africa, we were meeting other humans, sharing land, water, and sometimes blood with them. And through that contact and competition, our own species kept adapting, becoming more resilient, more cooperative, perhaps more cunning. Every time a rival species disappeared, we may have learned something or gained a small advantage, but we also lost unique branches of the human family tree forever, leaving only scraps of bone or traces in our DNA. And so, as Chapter 1 closes, we realize that the story of Homo sapiens doesn't start with dominance, but with coexistence. A strange and fragile balance between our ancestors and other forgotten humans who shaped us in ways we can still feel but barely remember, reminding us that even before we stepped out of Africa, we were already living in a world filled with other humans, some of whom vanished silently in the dark, leaving behind nothing but mystery and a haunting question: how many more humans walked beside us that we may never know? When Homo sapiens began their long journey out of Africa, somewhere between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago, they did not step into an empty world, but into territories already shaped and claimed by another kind of human, the Neanderthals, a powerful, cold-resistant species with massive strength and robust bodies that had survived ice ages, hunted mammoths, and crafted tools long before we even arrived. They made fire, wore clothing, and buried their dead with flowers, and some of them even etched shapes and symbols on cave walls. Imagine a group of early Homo sapiens entering a cold European valley, seeing distant figures with broad faces and thick brows moving through the snowy forest, faces that looked human, yet somehow different. Some encounters may have ended in violence, with spear points piercing through ribs, like the famous Shanidar wound, while others may have involved cautious cooperation, sharing hunting grounds, exchanging knowledge, or even forming bonds that led to children of mixed ancestry, which is why today almost all non-Africans carry between 1% and 3% Neanderthal DNA, a genetic legacy that influences our immune systems, skin color, and perhaps even how we react to stress or pain, meaning their blood still flows in ours. In some caves across the Middle East and Europe, we find layers of occupation where Neanderthals and Homo sapiens alternatively lived, using similar tools, hunting similar animals, a sign of cultural overlap and mutual influence. So these interactions were not merely battles for survival, but complex chapters of coexistence where fear, learning, and intimacy were all possible. But in time, our ancestors moved in larger and larger numbers, pushing further across Europe and Asia, and slowly the Neanderthal populations dwindled until by around 40,000 years ago they disappeared, not erased entirely, but absorbed partly into us. And just when it seemed that Homo sapiens had outlasted their most formidable cousins, something even more unexpected emerged from the dark. In 2010, scientists examined a small finger bone found in Siberia's Denisova cave and discovered DNA from a completely new type of human, not Neanderthal, not sapiens, but something else, today known as the Denisovans. We still don't know exactly what they looked like because we have barely any fossils. But astonishingly, many living people in East Asia, Southeast Asia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia carry Denisovan DNA. As much as 5% in some populations, suggesting that our ancestors had multiple waves of contact and interbreeding with them as they moved through Asia. Even more shocking was the discovery of a bone from a girl who had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father, a direct hybrid child that proves our prehistoric family tree is not a straight line, but a tangled web of living, mixing, and sometimes merging species. There is even evidence that the Denisovans passed on genes that help high-altitude survival, which is why modern Tibetans can breathe easily in thin mountain air, a gift from a people who vanished tens of thousands of years ago. So while some Denisovans may have been wiped out or replaced, others were genetically absorbed by Homo sapiens, living on invisibly within us. And as our ancestors pushed further east and south, they carried with them not only their own genes, but fragments of Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestry too, like fragments of other human souls stitched into the tapestry of our species. But here's the most exciting and eerie part. This was only the beginning, because beyond the mountains and frozen forests of mainland Asia were islands holding even stranger species of humans, tiny, isolated, almost mythical beings. And some of them survived until surprisingly recent times. In fact, in Chapter 3, we will explore those island worlds filled with creatures that looked like something straight out of a fantasy novel. Real-life hobbits, mysterious cave dwellers, and possibly humans even smaller and weirder than anything you've seen before. So stay tuned, because the story of who we met next will make everything you've heard so far feel like just the first chapter of a much deeper mystery. Long before Homo sapiens became the dominant form of humanity on Earth, another species had already conquered vast stretches of the world, Homo Erectus, the Great Wanderer, emerging nearly 2 million years ago and becoming the first human to ignite fire, make advanced stone tools, and leave African soil behind as they spread across the Middle East, India, China, and Southeast Asia. They hunted massive animals, survived among saber-toothed cats and enormous prehistoric elephants, and lived in Asia for more than 1 million years, outlasting other humans again and again. And recent evidence from Java in Indonesia now suggests that Homo erectus may have survived until as late as 108,000 years ago, which overlaps with the arrival of modern humans in the region, meaning it is entirely possible that our ancestors did not just learn about Homo erectus from carvings or distant rumors, but saw them with their own eyes as another tribe of strange humans, tall, lean, and ancient, perhaps watching us from a distance, perhaps avoiding or even confronting us. And though we have no definite proof of interbreeding, genetic hints of a mysterious archaic lineage in modern humans still raise the question whether Homo erectus silently gave some of its blood to us as well. But the story becomes even more surreal when we move into the isolated islands of Southeast Asia, where evolutionary forces shape tiny, almost mythical humans in complete isolation. On the island of Flores, we discovered Homo floresiensis, a fully grown adult species only about 3 feet tall, with chimp-like proportions, long arms, a brain the size of a grapefruit, yet they used stone tools, hunted giant rodents the size of rabbits, butchered pygmy elephants called stegodon, and may have used fire, all while living alongside massive Komodo dragons in a world that sounds more like a fantasy novel than real history. And they lived until at least 50,000 years ago, meaning that when Homo sapiens began arriving in the region, our two species likely encountered each other. Imagine a modern human stepping off a canoe or walking through a tropical valley and seeing a tribe of tiny, intelligent, dwarf-like humans moving through the forest. Did we think they were ghosts? Did they run from us, or did we kill them and take over their land? Local stories on Flores still speak of Ebu Gogo, small forest people who stole food and whispered in the night. And some believe these stories might be distant cultural memories of real encounters with Homo floresiensis. And just when we thought the world couldn't surprise us more, scientists found yet another species on the island of Luzon in the Philippines called Homo Luzonensis, known only from a few teeth and bones in Calao Cave, but clearly different from everything else. Small-bodied, with curved toes, suited for climbing, possibly descended from an early Homo erectus population that got stranded and then evolved in isolation over hundreds of thousands of years. And they too lived around 67,000 to 50,000 years ago, then vanished soon after Homo sapiens arrived, almost as though we were the final wave that wiped out these island peoples, whether through competition, violence, or simply outcompeting them for food and territory. What is truly haunting is that both Floresiensis and Luzonensis are each known from only one cave system, which means there must have been thousands of individuals living across those islands, entire families, entire histories, completely lost and perhaps never discovered because the tropical environments rot away bones quickly, leaving no trace behind unless they die in a cave. And meanwhile, in the same region, there are legends of tiny forest spirits across many islands, myths of wild small people, leading some scientists to speculate that more human species might have lived in other islands we haven't explored yet. Which means that even today, we could still find the remains of more unknown humans across Southeast Asia. When you put all of this together, Homo erectus as the original traveler, the Hobbit-like Floresiensis, the climbing Luzonensis, the ghost DNA in modern people, it becomes clear that our species did not just rise by intelligence alone, but through a long pattern of contacts, competitions, hybridizations, and extinctions, taking over the world one region at a time, and every new land we stepped into already had humans living there before us. Maybe if history had gone differently, one of them might have built ships, created languages, and become the dominant humans of Earth instead of us. We were not the chosen ones by destiny. We were simply the ones who outlasted the rest. And now, when we look back, there is both pride and sadness, because for every species we encountered, there were stories, cultures, skills, maybe even songs or beliefs that no longer exist anywhere except perhaps in fragments of myth and in tiny pieces of DNA still carried in our blood. And scientists believe there might have been at least 20 more species of human that we have not even discovered yet, hidden under collapsed caves, buried beneath jungles, or even deep underwater, making it possible that the human story is far larger than we can currently imagine. So as this chapter ends, let us remember, we were not the first humans, and we were certainly not the only ones. We were simply the last ones left standing. And if this reality fascinates you, stay tuned, because in the next video, I'm going to dive even deeper into one of these species and tell its story in detail. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and keep your eyes open, because human history has only just begun to reveal its secrets. As we turn toward the future, the story of humanity seems to be moving into a new kind of chapter, one where Homo sapiens are not just survivors of the past, but creators of entirely new possibilities. Yet even as we build technology, explore space, and edit our genes, we are still haunted by the unfinished story of the human family tree, because scientists believe there are still species of humans waiting to be discovered deep in caves that haven't been opened, in jungles that hide fossil secrets, or even beneath the sea where ancient land bridges once existed. Each year, archaeologists are finding fragments of bone that rewrite what we thought we knew. Skulls in China that don't fit any known species, mysterious DNA appearing in genetic studies with no matching fossil, and hints that there may have been other branches of humanity who lived up to 30,000 years ago, but have simply not been found yet. And perhaps they still linger in our myths, in tribal stories of little people, or in unexplained local legends that sound too strange to be fiction. At the same time, modern humans are changing rapidly. Not through natural evolution alone, but through artificial forces we have created. Technology, medicine, artificial intelligence, and even gene editing might push our species into a new form. We are living longer, merging with machines, building virtual realities, altering our children's DNA, and some scientists believe that in the next few centuries we may divide into different types of humans again, not by environment this time, but by technology, wealth, and access to bioengineering, which means that new kind of human designed or enhanced could appear among us just like Neanderthals and Denisovans once did, and future generations might look back at modern humans the way we look at Homo Erectus or even Homo Floresiensis, primitive, early versions of what humanity would become. At the same time, somewhere in the mountains of Asia, in unexplored caves or sediments buried under volcanic ash, there might be skeletons of unknown humans we still haven't encountered, and when those species are finally discovered, it could change everything we think about where we fit in the human tree, maybe revealing that we absorbed even more relatives than we ever imagined, and that our DNA is an even bigger mosaic of lost species. This means our story is not really finished, it's still being written, and whether through science, archaeology, or future evolution, we are about to meet new versions of ourselves once again, not just in the past, but possibly in the near future. One day, school children may learn not only about Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, but also about Homo technologicus or Homo hybridus, or whatever new form we will become. And just as we once looked at Denisovan fossils in shock, future humans might dig up our bones and study us as an ancient primitive species who lived in the beginning of the artificial age. Our journey started with stone tools and fire, then went through contact with other humans, then domination of the planet, and now it is entering a phase where we might become something entirely new, or possibly go extinct like the others if we fail to survive long-term challenges like climate change, resource collapse, or artificial intelligence beyond our control. So in a strange way, Chapter 4 teaches us that just as much as we study extinct humans to understand where we came from, one day someone might study us the same way, and history may repeat itself in ways we cannot imagine yet. And that is why the story of humanity is far from over, full of both danger and possibility. And in the next episode, I will explore how our evolution might continue in the age of technology. So if you want to know what the future human species could look like, make sure to stay tuned, like, comment, and subscribe, because the next part of this journey is only beginning.